Texas has almost 30 million people in it, the second most crowded state in the country. And yet there are roads out here where you can park in the middle of the only highway for miles, turn the engine off, and the loudest thing that happens all day is a 2,000-pound bison deciding whether or not to let you pass. That's the Texas nobody pictures. Everyone sees the freeways and the skylines. Almost nobody sees the other one, the towns where the population would fit on a school bus, and the night sky still has its full set of stars. We're counting down 11 of them, and we're ranking them by one number that doesn't show up on any census: how hard it is for a crowd to ever reach you. Call it the moat. Some of these towns are guarded by distance, some by a bad road, a brutal season, a literal curse, or pure stubbornness. The thinner the moat, the lower the rank. The deeper it is, the closer a place comes to being unreachable, the higher it climbs. Let's get into it. Number 11, Rockport Fulton. Start at the water. On the Texas coast, on a thumb of land called the Live Oak Peninsula, the wind blows so hard and so constantly off the bay that the live oaks themselves have given up fighting it. They grow permanently bent inland, branches swept sideways like a comb pulled through wet hair. Shrimp boats nod in the harbor. Pelicans sit on the pilings like they own them. The whole place feels like it slipped out of 1955 and never bothered to catch up. So here's the confession, because I want to be honest with you right out of the gate. Rockport Fulton is the most populated place on this entire list, around 11,000 people between the two towns. By the rule, it should not even be here. The reason it squeaks in is that its moat isn't distance, it's the calendar. For half the year, the snowbirds and the fishermen and the beach crowd pour in. Then the season turns, they all leave, and the town drops back into a deep coastal quiet. Galleries in 130-year-old brick storefronts, fresh redfish, nobody in a hurry. This is also one of the great birding spots on the planet. The Aransas Refuge nearby is the winter home of the last wild flock of whooping cranes on Earth, a bird that crashed to about 15 individuals in the 1940s and has clawed its way back to several hundred, every one of them descended from that tiny remnant. And out at Goose Island stands the big tree, a live oak that's been alive for something like 1,000 years, and shrugged off Hurricane Harvey when it flattened half the coast in 2017. It ranks last because the crowd does come, it just comes on a schedule. Move here, learn the off months, and you get the coast to yourself. That's the deal at number 11. A thin moat, but a real one. Number 10, Wimberley. Now a town that plays a trick on you. You drive into Wimberley and the cypress trees lean over a clear green creek. The limestone hills roll out in every direction and your shoulders drop about 2 inches. You feel like you've reached the middle of nowhere. Then you check the map and realize you're 45 minutes from downtown Austin. That's the catch, and it's why a place this lovely sits this low. About 2,900 people live here in the heart of the hill country, right between Austin and San Antonio. The crown jewel is the Blue Hole, a spring-fed swimming hole on Cypress Creek so blue it looks color-corrected. Rope swings over cold water, families spread out under the trees. But here's the tell. In the summer, you need a reservation to swim. A town where you have to book the swimming hole is a town the crowd has already found. Up the road is Jacob's Well, and it's one of the more haunting things in Texas. A perfectly round artesian spring that drops straight down into one of the longest underwater cave systems in the state, mapped past a mile deep. It's beautiful, and it has killed people. 8 divers died exploring those flooded chambers between 1960 and 1985. And in a detail that tells you everything about Wimberley's future, the well has twice simply stopped flowing. Once in 2000, again in 2008, because so many wells in the booming county are now sipping from the same aquifer. The moat here is thin and getting thinner every year because Austin sprawl is a tide and Wimberley is standing right at the waterline. Gorgeous. Discovered. Number 10. Number 9. Jefferson. Let me tell you how a town gets cursed. In 1874, the railroad tycoon Jay Gould rode into Jefferson, then a booming river port and one of the richest settlements in all of Texas. He wanted to run his railroad straight through it. The town fathers, fat and confident on steamboat money, turned him down. Gould was furious. As the story goes, he signed the register at the Excelsior House Hotel with 3 words, "The end of Jefferson," and swore that grass would grow in its streets and bats would roost in its church towers. Then he left. And it nearly happened. This is deep East Texas now. No desert in sight, but black bayou water, Spanish moss, towering cypress. Jefferson sat on Big Cypress Bayou, and for 30 years it was the second richest town in Texas, a steamboat city moving cotton to the world. Then the water levels dropped, the steamboats couldn't run, the railroad went elsewhere, and the population collapsed from tens of thousands to barely 1,000. The curse looked real. well. What's left is one of the strangest small towns in the South. Under 2,000 people, red brick streets, Gilded Age mansions, and a tourism economy built almost entirely on calling itself the most haunted small town in Texas. You can tour Jay Gould's own private rail car, the Atalanta, parked right across from the hotel that supposedly holds his curse.
And a short drive away is Caddo Lake, the only natural lake in Texas, a flooded cypress maze that looks less like a lake than a swamp from a fairy tale. Jefferson's Moat is that curse. The world drove past it for 100 years and never came back, which is exactly why today it's so quiet.
Number 9. Number 8. Archer City. Here's a town that became one man's library. 2 hours northwest of the Dallas-Fort Worth sprawl, out in flat cattle and oil country, sits Archer City. Its most famous son was Larry McMurtry, the man who wrote Lonesome Dove, Terms of Endearment, and the screenplay for Brokeback Mountain. He grew up here and he turned his own dying hometown into a novel, The Last Picture Show, about a fading Texas town whose only movie theater, the Royal, closes its doors forever. They filmed it right here. The real Royal Theater had already burned down in 1965. The town rebuilt the front of it in 2000 so it would look like the movie poster again. But McMurtry did something stranger than write about the town. He decided to fill it with books. He opened a rare bookstore called Booked Up, then bought up the empty storefronts around the square one by one and stuffed them with his collection. At its peak, around 450,000 books across 4 buildings. For a while, this town of 1,700 people held 500,000 books. In 2012, near the end of his life, McMurtry auctioned most of them off. After he died, Chip and Joanna Gaines bought the main store and sold it on to become the Larry McMurtry Literary Center, open today. The moat here is obscurity and flatness. Nothing pulls a crowd to Archer City, no mountains, no beach, no festival. The only people who make the drive are book people, and book people are quiet. They come from Ireland and Wyoming, wander the shelves for a weekend, and slip away. You could live your whole life on that square and only ever be interrupted by someone looking for a first edition. Number 7. Key to Key. Now we head up into the part of Texas that even Texans forget exists, the Panhandle. And we go to a town most people can't even pronounce. It's spelled Q-U-I-T-A-Q-U-E. It's said Kittiquay. It comes from a word meaning end of the trail, and the name fits. Here's your first morning. You drive down toward the lake at Caprock Canyon State Park, and you round a curve and stop hard, because standing in the middle of the road is a bull bison the size of a small car, and he is not moving for you. You move for him. This is the official Texas state bison herd, and it carries one of the great survival stories in the state. These animals are the last of the Southern Plains bison, the herd that was slaughtered to near extinction in the 1800s. They exist because of one woman, Mary Ann Goodnight, wife of the cattleman Charles Goodnight, who in 1878 begged her husband to bring her a few orphaned calves so the line wouldn't vanish entirely. By 1994, the herd had dwindled to about 50 animals. The state moved a handful into this park, and now well over 100 roam free across the Red Rock Canyons. And the canyons are the other reason to be here. This is the Caprock, where the flat, high plains suddenly crack open into dramatic red and orange gorges, 90 miles of trails, vistas off the highway that look airbrushed. The town itself is just a few hundred people, 100 miles southeast of Amarillo, on a road to nowhere in particular. The moat is the Panhandle itself. Flat, far, and off every route anybody famous ever drives. The crowd that ruins better-known parks has simply never bothered to come this far north. You get wild bison in your backyard and canyons most of the state has never seen. Number 6. Comfort. Most towns spend their whole lives clawing to become a city, to get a mayor, a council, a seal, a government. Comfort has spent 170 years refusing to. To this day, it has no city government, on purpose, and the locals guard that fact like an heirloom. To understand why, you have to know who built it. Comfort was founded in 1854 by German immigrants, but not just any Germans. These were freethinkers, abolitionists, rationalists who had fled the failed democratic revolutions of 1840s Europe and arrived deeply allergic to authority of every kind. They organized the town as a cooperative, refused to install a government, and didn't bother to build a church for nearly 40 years. When the Civil War came, they refused to fight for the Confederacy. Dozens were hunted down and killed trying trying to escape south to Mexico, slaughtered at the Battle of the Nueces in 1862. The town raised a monument to them in 1866, the Toya de Union, Loyalty to the Union, the oldest Civil War monument in Texas, and the only one in the entire South that honors the Union side. It's one of only a small handful of places in the whole country where the American flag is permitted to fly at half-staff permanently, every single day. That stubborn streak never left. Comfort has one of the best preserved historic limestone districts in Texas, and when nearby Fredericksburg transformed itself into a wine tourism machine packed with weekend traffic, Comfort was asked if it wanted to do the same. The town's answer was a flat, proud no. About 2,000 people live here, around 45 minutes from San Antonio. Its moat isn't distance, a city is right there. Its moat is character. It is quiet because it decided to be, and it will fight you to stay that way. Number 6. If a town on this list has already snuck onto your someday list, go ahead and subscribe. That quiet itch to disappear somewhere is the whole reason this channel exists. Number 5. Marfa. I'm about to put a world-famous town at number 5, and I need you to stay with me because the reason it works is the entire point of this list. The international art world picked this town. Fashion magazines shoot here, celebrities fly in, and it is still nearly empty. About 1,800 people, 60 miles from the Mexican border, 3 hours from the nearest real city, marooned in the high desert. In 1973, a New York minimalist artist named Donald Judd got tired of the city, came out here, bought a decommissioned army fort, and filled it with enormous concrete and aluminum sculptures, the Chinati Foundation. Other artists followed. Now tourism has overtaken ranching as the thing that keeps the lights on. You've seen Marfa even if you don't know it. There's the Prada Marfa installation, a fake luxury boutique standing alone in the open desert, doors that don't open, a wry joke about consumerism in the middle of nothing. There are the Marfa lights, mysterious glows out on the horizon that people have argued over since the 1800s. The state legislature formally recognized them as a genuine, unexplained phenomenon in 2003. Giant was filmed near here. So were No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood. So why only number 5? Because of every town above this point, Marfa is the one the crowd has tried hardest to breach. Fame is a battering ram. And it's been hammering at this moat for 50 years, driving up housing prices, pushing out families who've lived in the county for generations. The distance still protects it. You can't shrink 200 miles of desert. But a place this discovered, where you reserve a table and book a room months out, can't sit any higher on a list about avoiding crowds. The win still wins out here, but it has to share. Number 4. Fort Davis. If you've been waiting this whole list for somewhere that isn't flat and isn't scorching, exhale. Fort Davis is the highest town in Texas, over 5,000 feet up in the Davis Mountains, where the summer heat finally breaks and the air carries actual relief. There are pine trees. It's the rare West Texas town that's cool and green instead of brown and brutal, and it's home to one of the great monuments to human curiosity. On top of Mount Locke, the highest point you can drive to on any Texas highway, just shy of 6,800 feet, sits the McDonald Observatory, staring up into some of the darkest, clearest skies on the continent. The way it got there is almost too strange to be true. A bachelor banker named William Johnson McDonald from the faraway town of Paris, Texas, with no background in science and no connection to the University of Texas, died in 1926 and left nearly his entire fortune, about $1 million, to that university to build an observatory. The university didn't even have an astronomy department at the time. A local ranching family donated the mountaintop in 1933 to make it real. Today, a tiny crew of astronomers and staff, around 64 people, actually lives up there, 16 miles from town, and they just call their home the mountain. The whole county guards its darkness with light pollution laws, all of it folded into one of the largest dark sky reserves in the world. Down in the valley, there's a historic frontier fort in a beautiful state park. So why is the prettiest place on this list only number 4? Same reason it's so pretty. People know. The air is cool, the stars are famous, the roads are good and paved, and folks move here for exactly that. A reachable paradise is still reachable, and that caps the moat. Number 4. Number 3. Marathon. This one starts with a phone call. Sometime in the 1980s, a Houston businessman named J.P. Bryan was making the long drive between the city and his ranch out near Big Bend when he passed through a fading little railroad town and saw a for sale sign in the window of its old hotel. He called the number out of curiosity. The man who answered told him he was the first person who'd ever bothered to call. That hotel was the Gage, a handsome yellow brick place built in 1927 by a cattle baron and banker banker named Alfred Gage as the headquarters for his half-million-acre ranch. Brian bought it, found it in horrifying shape, and spent decades restoring it anyway. And in doing so, he didn't just save a building, he arguably saved the whole town around it. Marathon today has maybe 430 people. It got its odd name from a railroad surveyor who thought the surrounding country looked like the plains of ancient Greece. In its working days, it shipped rubber pulled from the guayuli shrub and wax boiled from the candelilla plant. Desert industries you've probably never heard of, but the real reason to live here is straight up. Marathon sits in a wide basin ringed by mountains that block out every stray glow from anywhere else, which gives it some of the darkest skies in West Texas. On a clear night, the Milky Way doesn't sprinkle across the sky, it spills, edge to edge, bright enough to read by. Its moat is genuine, tiny, remote, wrapped in dark. The one thing keeping it out of the top 2 is that it's the northern gateway to Big Bend, so the park traffic does roll through on its way south. Quiet, but not invisible. Number 3. Number 2, Terlingua. Nobody really moves to Terlingua. People wash up here. This is the end of the pavement, a dot in the desert between Big Bend National Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park. Hours past the last city of any size, in a stretch of country that becomes a furnace half the year. A century ago, it was a roaring mercury mining boomtown. The Chisos Mining Company pulled cinnabar out of these canyons, boiled it down into quicksilver, and at its peak, this single patch of desert produced something like 40% of all the mercury mined in the United States. 2,000 or 3,000 people lived here. Then the demand collapsed. The company went bankrupt in 1942, and the town simply emptied out. A real ghost town. The crumbling adobe walls are still standing, scattered up the hillsides. What's left now is around 100 desert eccentrics, and one of the most unforgettable little communities in Texas. The heart of it is the Starlight Theater, a 1930s movie house whose roof got torn off in a storm, leaving the open West Texas sky as the ceiling for years. That's how it got the name. Today, it's the restaurant, and people line up on the porch at sunset to drink and trade stories with characters you couldn't invent. Up the hill is the Terlingua Cemetery, where every day of the dead the graves glow with candles and offerings. One of the most photographed graveyards in the country. Twice a year on the first weekend of November, 2 rival chili cook-offs descend and the town briefly explodes, then everyone leaves and the silence drops back down. There's no Walmart, no Starbucks, no Dairy Queen. When you go out to eat, you can look the owner in the eye. The moat here is almost perfect. Distance, heat, and the simple fact that the road runs out. Almost nothing about living here is easy, and that difficulty is the filter that keeps it pure. It lands at number 2 for one reason only. Big Bend's crowds pass within a few miles of it. To beat that, you have to find a place the crowd never even drives near. Number 1, Valentine. And here it is. The flaw in every single place we've climbed past is the same. A crowd can reach it, if it tries hard enough. Number 1 fixes that flaw by being too small and too far for a crowd to ever form in the first place. Welcome to Valentine. Somewhere between 100 and 150 people, the only incorporated town in its entire county, sitting on a lonely stretch of Highway 90 between Marfa and Van Horn. It got its name in 1882, when a railroad crew laying track east reached this exact spot on February the 14th and named it for the day. It peaked at around 600 people in the 1930s and has been quietly draining away ever since. The closest grocery store is a 30-minute drive. The Amtrak still rolls right through town on the Union Pacific line, and it does not stop. It just passes, the way the whole modern world passes Valentine, and keeps going. But once a year, this almost empty town does something extraordinary. Its post office, a tiny adobe building that the Postal Service actually threatened to shut down in 2012 for lack of business until the town fought back and won, gets buried under mail from every corner of the planet. People send their Valentine's cards here, so the single postal worker will hand cancel each one with the special Valentine postmark, a design the local school children compete to draw every year. And a mile outside town sits Prada Marfa, that fake desert boutique, its fence hung with padlocks left behind by lovers. Sit with the contrast, because it's the whole story. The most romantic sounding address in all of Texas is also one of the emptiest places a person can legally call home. One employee runs the post office. The train won't even slow down. You don't pass through Valentine on your way to somewhere else. There is no somewhere else out here. To get to Valentine, you have to genuinely mean it, which is exactly why no crowd crowd ever does. 11 towns, 11 different walls holding the world back. A calendar, a curse, a canyon, a furnace, and pure stubbornness. So tell me in the comments, which one would you actually mail yourself to? Like this video if even one of them just landed on your map, and subscribe. The farther out we go, the quieter it gets.